In a small, quiet town surrounded by endless trees and forgotten roads, stood an old Victorian house that had remained unsold for over 3 decades. Its paint was peeling, the windows were dusty, and the air around it always seemed unusually still, as if time itself avoided going near it. But it wasn't just the creepy look of the place that kept people away, it was the stories. Everyone in the town knew about the house, especially the basement door that no one had ever dared to open. Some said it was cursed, others whispered that people who entered never returned. Yet one day, a young woman named Aisha arrived from another city, eager for a fresh start. After losing her parents in a tragic accident, she was looking for a quiet place to escape her painful memories. And the house seemed perfect, cheap, peaceful, and completely hers. She didn't care about the rumors. She believed in logic, not ghost stories. A few days after moving in, Aisha noticed something odd about the house. Everything was strangely cold, even on warm days. The rooms were mostly normal, except for one, the hallway at the back that led to the basement. The basement door was unlike any other door in the house, thick, wooden, and sealed with 3 rusty iron locks. Whenever she walked past it, she felt a strange chill run down her spine. At first she ignored it, but things started to change. On the 3rd night, she woke up around 2:13 a.m. to a soft, whispering sound. It was faint, almost like wind, but it was coming from beneath her floor. She got up and followed the sound down the hallway, only to find herself standing before the basement door. The air was freezing. The whispers stopped the moment she touched the knob. She walked away. The next morning, when she passed by the door again, she saw something that made her heart race. All 3 locks were undone. She was sure she hadn't touched them, and she lived alone. Fear started to creep in, but she convinced herself it was just old, rusty locks slipping open on their own. That night, the whispers returned, clearer this time. She could hear her name being whispered. "Aisha, come down, come down." She recorded the sound with her phone, but when she played it back, the audio was corrupted. All she heard was static, and one phrase, "Let us out." She felt watched, even when she was alone. The mirrors in her house began to fog up for no reason. The lights flickered constantly, and sometimes turned off completely for a few seconds. She would catch glimpses of something behind her in the mirror, but when she turned, there was nothing there. Her dreams became nightmares. She saw herself walking into the basement, only to be swallowed by shadows. One day, she invited a locksmith to the house to seal the basement completely. The man arrived cheerfully, but the moment he touched the door, his face turned pale. He backed away, shaking his head, saying, "I can't help you. I'm sorry," and left without another word. That night, at exactly 3 a.m., her phone rang. There was no caller ID. She answered it, thinking maybe it was the locksmith calling back. But no one spoke. There was only heavy breathing, followed by a voice that whispered, "They're already inside." Aisha dropped the phone. She wanted to leave the house, but it felt like something was keeping her there. The doors creaked even when closed. Shadows moved on their own. Her reflection in the mirror started behaving strangely. Once, she saw it smile back at her even though she wasn't smiling. On the 7th night, sleep-deprived and mentally drained, she stood in front of the basement door again. The locks were hanging loose. Her hand trembled as she reached for the knob. Her reflection in a nearby mirror was grinning unnaturally. She opened the door slowly. It creaked open, revealing complete darkness. The air that escaped from inside was ice cold and smelled of earth and decay. She stepped down the wooden stairs. The door slammed shut behind her. She turned back, but the stairs had vanished. There was only a wall now. She was trapped in a pitch-black space that felt alive. Whispers filled the air again, louder, angrier. "One more soul! One more soul!" Shapes began to form in the darkness, tall, thin figures with stretched mouths and hollow eyes. One of them reached out and grabbed her wrist. She screamed, trying to pull away, but more hands appeared, cold and bony, grabbing her ankles, her arms, her hair. She ran deeper into the basement, finding strange objects scattered around, broken toys, cracked mirrors, and a rocking horse that rocked on its own. On the far wall, glowing faintly in red, were the words. She opened it. The figures followed her slowly, whispering her name again and again. She tried to scream, but her voice wouldn't come out. The walls began to close in. Just as the shadows reached her, everything went black. But that wasn't the end. Aisha opened her eyes in a strange version of her own home. Silent, colorless, with no sound or warmth. She was inside a mirror world, a reflection of the place she once lived. Outside in the real world, no one could see her anymore. She screamed against the glass, but her cries were silent. Days passed. She watched people walk through the house, unaware of her presence. Once, she saw a young couple enter the home for a tour. She banged the mirror, shouting to warn them, but they didn't hear. The woman walked down the hallway toward the basement wall. A faint outline of the door appeared again. It was back. Aisha realized something horrifying. Every time someone new came, the door returned, waiting for the next soul. The house wasn't just haunted, it was feeding. The next morning, the house was silent. A neighbor, worried after not seeing Aisha for days, called the police. Officers arrived, searched the house, but found no sign of her. Strangely, there was no basement door anymore. Just a blank wall where it used to be. No one could explain where it went, or where Aisha had gone. But ever since that day, locals say that if you walk past the house late at night, and if you listen very closely, you can still hear her whispering, begging for someone to help her. And among the whispers, one voice always stands out. Don't open the basement door like she did. In the heart of a forgotten village, tucked between two crumbling hills, stood a mansion long abandoned by time. The air around it always felt colder. The sky above it always seemed darker. And no one in the village dared speak of the girl who once lived there. A girl who was said to still be trapped inside a mirror. It was not a fairy tale, nor a folk legend. It was a warning, one passed down in hushed voices by trembling elders. When 17-year-old Sarah moved into that very mansion with her mother after her father's sudden death, she knew nothing of the stories. Her mother had inherited the house from a distant aunt, and wanted a fresh start. Sarah, quiet and withdrawn since the tragedy, simply went along. The house, though old and eerie, was structurally strong, filled with antique furniture and dusty portraits. But it was the mirror in Sarah's bedroom that stood out. 7 feet tall, framed in black wood carved with faces twisted in agony, and the glass surface so polished it reflected not just images, but a strange kind of depth, as if something on the other side was watching. On the first night, Sarah thought she saw the reflection of a girl behind her, a pale face with long dark hair and hollow eyes. She turned quickly, but there was no one. She told herself it was just stress and lack of sleep. But the next night the same face appeared, this time mouthing words Sarah couldn't hear. The third night the girl smiled. Sarah began avoiding the mirror, covering it with a blanket. But every morning she woke to find the blanket on the floor, and the mirror spotless. Her mother dismissed it as sleepwalking. But Sarah knew better. One day, she tried to record the mirror on her phone. But every video showed only static, and strange symbols flashed for a split second. Symbols that didn't belong to any known language. Curious and terrified, Sarah visited the local library where she met Mr. Alden, the oldest living villager. When she mentioned the mirror, he froze. "You need to leave that house," he said, voice shaking. That mirror belonged to Elise Rowan, the original owner's daughter. She was obsessed with her reflection. She believed the mirror showed her a better version of herself, a twin who lived in the mirror world. They say she made a deal to switch places. She vanished, and her twin took her place for a while. Sarah asked what happened to the twin. Mr. Alden looked her dead in the eyes and whispered. She grew bored and returned to the mirror. But Elise never came back. That night, Sarah stared at the mirror. The girl in it stared back. Slowly, the reflection raised its hand, but Sarah hadn't moved. The girl mouthed, "Help me." Her voice echoed inside Sarah's mind. She reached forward, touched the glass, and felt it ripple like water. Her room faded, and she found herself in a twisted version of her bedroom, darker, colder, and wrong. The mirror was now behind her, and she saw herself smiling in it. But it wasn't her. It was the girl. And Sarah was now in her world. The mirror went dark. On the other side, the girl, now in Sarah's body, blinked and turned, smiling as she walked downstairs to greet Sarah's mother. Trapped in the mirror world, Sarah screamed, but her voice was swallowed by silence. Time moved differently there. Shadows whispered secrets. The world was endless reflections with no escape. The girl visited Sarah often, mocking her, showing her images of her life, how she had taken her place, charmed her mother, made friends and laughed. Sarah's mother didn't suspect a thing. Weeks passed. Sarah stopped screaming. She searched for other trapped souls and found reflections of people long gone. Some crying, some insane, some turned to glass. They told her the mirror feeds on longing, the desire to be someone else. Elise's spirit, now barely human, warned Sarah there was only one way out. Someone on the outside must willingly take your place. The idea haunted her. But then came hope. One day, Sarah saw her best friend Emily visit the house. In her reflection, Emily saw Sarah waving, crying for help. Emily paused, confused. The girl in Sarah's body acted strange, cold, distant. Emily began suspecting something was wrong. One night, Sarah managed to scratch words into the glass. "It's me. Help." Emily read it. Terrified, she confronted the girl. The girl laughed, then grew furious and locked the room. But it was too late. Emily believed the real Sarah was trapped. Emily began researching and found Elise's name in old newspaper clippings. She returned to the mansion with candles, salt, and a ritual copied from an old grimoire. On the next full moon, she drew a circle in front of the mirror and chanted the forbidden words. The room shook. The glass cracked. The girl screamed. From the mirror, hands reached out, Sarah's hands. Emily grabbed them and pulled. The girl tried to stop her, but the mirror shattered in a blast of light. When the dust settled, Sarah lay on the floor gasping. The girl was gone. But the story didn't end there. Sarah was back, but not the same. Her reflection sometimes didn't match her movements. She woke at night with bruises she couldn't explain. Mirrors across the house began cracking one by one. Emily, worried, tried to stay close, but Sarah grew distant. Then one day, Emily found a note on her bed. "I never made it out. She's still here." Panicked, Emily rushed to Sarah's house and found it empty. Only the broken mirror remained, except it wasn't broken anymore. Its surface was whole, and inside, she saw Sarah, still trapped. The girl had tricked them all. She was out. Sarah was now part of the mirror world forever. And from that day on, every time someone stood before a mirror in that village, they felt the urge to look a little longer, to wonder what their reflection might do if they turned away. And sometimes late at night, the reflection doesn't wait for that moment. It moves first. But it didn't stop there. Sarah's spirit, now one with the mirror world, was forced to relive her memories over and over. She watched the girl live her life, graduate school, fall in love, become a mother, while she remained frozen in glass, a shadow of herself. The mirror grew more powerful with each soul it devoured, and soon, it began appearing in other places. An antique store in the city, a hotel in another country. Each time it was placed in a room, strange things followed. Whispers at night, vanishing children, people forgetting who they were. Sarah was no longer the only one. Over time, she met others. A teacher who had touched the mirror during a renovation. A little boy who had been dared by friends. A bride who had stared too long at her reflection. They had all been replaced. Each one had a story, a scream, a regret. But Sarah refused to give up. She learned to move inside the mirror world, to find cracks in the surface, to whisper into the ears of those closest to the edge. She waited, and waited, until one day, a young girl named Lila bought the mirror at a flea market. She was bright, curious, and brave, and she saw Sarah instantly. Instead of fear, Lila felt empathy. She began talking to the mirror, asking questions, spending time. Slowly, Sarah began guiding her, showing her memories, spelling messages in the fog. Lila understood. She brought the mirror to a hilltop under a thunderstorm, placed it in a circle of salt and iron, and held a candle as she chanted Sarah's name. The winds howled. The mirror shattered again. But this time, no one came out. Because Sarah had made a choice, not to return, but to stay to fight. She had learned the secret. The mirror didn't trap people, it fed on their desire. But if someone entered it willingly with no wish for change, no envy, just compassion, it weakened. Lila, selfless and pure, cracked the curse further than anyone before. Sarah used the energy to trap the girl forever, locking her deeper inside than anyone had ever gone. And then Sarah opened her eyes in the real world. Her body was her own. The curse was fading. But somewhere, deep inside a shard of glass buried in the dirt, the girl still waits, silent, bitter, watching. And if someone ever feels too unhappy, too lost, too desperate to be someone else, the mirror will return. But it will be different. This time, it's not the girl who waits to replace you. It's Sarah, now a part of the mirror, forever watching, forever waiting for someone else to want to be her. In a small, forgotten village surrounded by thick woods, there was a story that haunted every soul who lived there. It was a story of a deep, untamed forest that no one dared enter, for the voices from within it were set to call out to anyone foolish enough to listen. The villagers spoke of these voices in hushed tones, warnings passed down through generations. It was a forest older than the village itself, its trees towering and twisted, their gnarled roots reaching deep into the earth like the fingers of something ancient. The forest was alive with secrets, and those who ventured too close had never returned, their fate sealed by the voices that beckoned from within. Among the villagers was a young girl named Mia, who had grown up hearing the stories of the cursed forest. Her parents, like all the others, had warned her to stay away, but Mia, full of curiosity and the defiance of youth, never fully believed the tales. To her they were just that, stories. She loved to explore, to wander through the woods on the outskirts of the village, always within sight of the safety of her home. The villagers would shake their heads and whisper when they saw her, but Mia ignored them. She was different from the others, braver, more adventurous, or so she thought. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the air grew colder, Mia stood at the edge of the forest. She could feel the pull, a strange force drawing her toward the darkening trees. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying with it faint whispers, voices too soft to understand. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, but she told herself it was just the wind. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped closer to the forest's edge. The air felt thick, heavy, like something was watching her. Mia had heard the voices before, but this time they seemed different, more distinct. They were not just the rustling of leaves, or the call of an owl in the distance. These voices were human, pleading, desperate. She stepped forward, her feet crunching the dry leaves beneath her. The closer she got, the clearer the voices became, calling her name. Mia! Mia! The voice was a whisper, soft and soothing at first, but as she moved deeper into the forest, it grew louder, more urgent. The wind howled around her, the trees groaning as if warning her to turn back, but Mia pressed on. She had to know what the voices were, who they belonged to. The forest seemed to swallow her whole as she ventured deeper, the sunlight fading until only the dim light of the moon filtered through the thick canopy above. The air was colder now, and the trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches like arms reaching for her. She shivered but pushed forward, her feet slipping on the damp ground as she stumbled through the underbrush. The voices were everywhere now, swirling around her, coming from every direction. Mia! Mia, help us! The whispers grew louder, more frantic. Mia's heart raced as she tried to locate the source of the voices. There was a sense of urgency in their tone, a sense of something that needed to be done, something that had to be stopped. She ran, following the voices, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Then, as if by some unnatural force, the forest fell silent. The voices stopped. Mia froze, her body tense, her senses alert. She looked around, but the darkness was oppressive, her eyes unable to make sense of the shadows. She had been following the voices, but now she felt lost, disoriented. A cold dread settled in her chest as she realized she had no idea where she was anymore. Panic set in, and she turned, trying to retrace her steps. But the forest seemed to shift, the trees twisting and turning in ways they hadn't been before. It was as if the forest itself had become a maze, a living, breathing thing that was closing in on her. She stumbled through the trees, calling out for help. But the forest swallowed her words, as if it had ears of its own. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Then she heard it again, the voice soft at first but then louder, more insistent. Mia! Mia! It was coming from ahead of her. But this time, it sounded different. It was no longer a whisper, no longer a plea for help. It was something else entirely, something darker, something more sinister. Mia! The voice called again, this time from directly in front of her. She stopped dead in her tracks. The voice was unmistakable. It was her own. She felt a chill run through her, her blood freezing in her veins as she realized that the voice wasn't coming from anyone else. It was coming from within the forest, from the very air around her. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and the trees groaned as if waking from a deep slumber. Mia backed away, her heart hammering in her chest. The forest seemed to be alive, and it was closing in on her. She could feel the weight of it, pressing down on her shoulders, suffocating her. She turned to run, but the path she had come from was gone, replaced by a thick wall of trees that seemed to reach out and grab at her. She screamed, her voice echoing through the woods, but no one answered. She was alone. The voice continued to call her name, growing louder, closer, more urgent. Mia! The sound was now a chorus of voices, overlapping and merging into one, all of them calling her, pleading with her. Mia's mind raced as she tried to make sense of it. Was it the spirits of those lost in the forest? Was it some dark force that had been awakened by her presence? Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud crack, the sound of something large moving through the trees. She turned, her eyes wide with fear. In the darkness she saw movement, something tall looming, its shape indistinct but powerful. A shadow, almost human in form, but not quite. It moved toward her with unnatural speed, its limbs long and twisted, its eyes glowing with a faint eerie light. Mia backed away, stumbling over roots and rocks, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature didn't stop. It moved relentlessly toward her, its presence suffocating. Mia could feel its cold gaze upon her, hear the thud of its footsteps as it drew nearer. Desperation filled her, and she turned to run, but the ground beneath her feet gave way, and she fell, tumbling down into a dark pit. She hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her body, but she couldn't stop. She scrambled to her feet, panic flooding her mind. The creature was still coming. The voices were still calling. And Mia had nowhere to hide. She ran through the forest, no longer sure where she was going, only knowing that she had to keep moving, had to escape. But as she ran, the forest seemed to stretch endlessly before her, an endless expanse of trees and shadows. She was trapped. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The voices, the creature, the forest, they were all gone. The air was still silent. Mia stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had it all been a nightmare? Had she imagined it all? But then she looked around and she saw it. The trees had formed a circle around her, a perfect ring. And in the center of the circle was a stone altar, ancient and covered in moss. On the altar lay something small and delicate, a child's toy. Mia approached the altar, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the toy. As soon as her fingers brushed it, the forest came alive again. The voices returned, louder than ever, and the creature reappeared, now closer than ever. But this time Mia understood. The forest wasn't trying to kill her. It was trying to protect her. The toy, the altar, the voices, they were all part of the forest's ancient magic, a magic that had been disturbed by her presence. Mia understood now that the forest had a consciousness, a will of its own, and it was using her to find something, or someone, that had been lost long ago. Mia closed her eyes, and for a moment, everything was still. The voices faded, the creature disappeared, and the air grew calm. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing back at the edge of the forest, as if nothing had happened. The village was in sight, and the moon hung high in the sky, casting its silver light on the world below. Mia turned to look back at the forest one last time, But the voices had stopped. And as she walked away, she knew that the forest would always be there, waiting for the next soul brave enough to listen to its call. The voices would never stop. They would never be silenced. And the forest would always be hungry for more.